Ken, welcome back to the show. Merry Christmas, almost Christmas, Merry Christmas Eve. How are you today, Ken?
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you too. I'm doing well. I drove back to the Ohio area, about a 9-hour drive 2 days ago. So I'm a couple hours from Butler. I might make another trip over there during the holidays if some sources make themselves available. We'll see. But other than that, just ready to have a day off after I talk to you.
Great. Well, and thank you for taking time out of your day, particularly today. For people who haven't seen our previous shows together, Ken, I'm really excited because you have just launched a Substack page, and in about 30 minutes, you and I are going to be doing a sponsor-exclusive segment that people will be able to watch on all the Crowdsource the Truth sponsorship channels, but also, for the first time, on substack.com/@ Ken Silva. So I would really encourage people to get over there. Ken is going to be adding all kinds of stuff to that page. Ken is a fantastic reporter, really traditional journalist who has been digging in and finding all kinds of wonderful evidence and doing right-to-know requests there in Butler, PA. Ken is also writing for Headline USA. And, Ken, before we dig into what we're going to talk about today with regard to the right-to-know request and all the developments there, can you tell us a little bit about what's going on here on Headline USA? I see you've got some, what's her name, Hutchinson there, information. What's happening with her?
Oh, yeah. So I'm sure most of your viewers are familiar with Cassidy Hutchinson, the quote star witness of Liz Cheney's January 6th committee. She lied about Trump like lunging to grab the wheel of his vehicle, attacking his own Secret Service guards, trying to get the car back to the Capitol. A number of inconsistencies with their testimony, which were all discovered. Well, not discovered, but investigated by the House Oversight Subcommittee, which is led by a congressman named Barry Loudermilk. Well, according to a report yesterday from Breitbart News, the Oversight Subcommittee actually wanted to subpoena Cassidy Hutchinson to, get an explanation for why she apparently lied, on national television numerous times and what her dealings with Liz Cheney were. And but our intrepid House Speaker blocked that from happening. So it's not a good sign for Congress moving forward, and it just kind of is the latest evidence that Mike Johnson is not the leader that we need at this point.
Wow. I mean, that is shocking. It's so disappointing, Ken, because I've met Mike Johnson, just going to the different hearings and everything, and he's such a friendly guy. I was having a conversation with somebody about this, all this news and kind of nonsense coming out about Matt Gaetz, which I really don't believe on the basis of the lack of credibility of his accusers. But, when I met Mike Johnson, he was super friendly, very polite and all that. A little bit the opposite of Matt Gaetz. However, Matt Gaetz is extremely effective, and our buddy Mr. Johnson here also the opposite. So frankly, I'm not planning on going to the movies and hanging out with Matt Gaetz. So I'd rather have a congressman who's a jerk but effective than somebody who's polite and gets nothing done. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. These are our advocates, our representatives in D.C. It's no different than if you were hiring an attorney to represent you in court. You don't want to hire a friend. You want to hire a ruthless killer. And it does not appear to be what Mike Johnson is.
No, and it doesn't bode well for his future with the gavel. But it's just so disappointing that these congressional committees, time after time, they're just getting themselves sound bites and maybe, future gigs on news shows or OAN or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But hopefully that can turn around. What else have we got here in Headline USA that might be interesting to people as we head into the holiday weekend?
Oh, well, since we're talking about, Trump assassination attempts, I just did a story this morning on how the trial of the alleged second assassin, Ryan Ruth, was bumped back to September. He was initially going to go to trial in just 2 months here in February, but he's got, I think, terabytes of discovery. And actually, his lawyers are contemplating mounting an insanity defense. So apparently, he's currently being undergoing mental health evaluations. And his lawyers wanted to bump the trial back all the way to next December. But Judge Eileen Cannon kind of split the baby and said, well, we're going to give you a little bit of a reprieve and delay it from February, but I'm not going to give you, almost a year delay that you were seeking.
Good news that Aileen Cannon is on the case. She seems to be a justice-minded. I think probably Democrats would say, she's in the tank for Trump, but I don't think that's the case. It's that all of these legal cases that have come up have been so stacked against Trump and so misaligned in terms of pursuit of justice that it's hard to find a judge who can make any kind of fair ruling, but we'll have to keep our eyes on that. Now, I know, Ken, you and I slightly disagree perhaps on what was going on in Butler, PA. You're not a big proponent of the Max Urich theories, are you?
So, when we're talking about evidence, I'd say, there's impossible, plausible, probable, and almost 100% for sure. And with the Maxwell Urich, I'm at plausible, but I wouldn't say it's probable. I'm keeping it open until if and when we find out where this guy is. So I'm not downplaying it by any means.
Now, I don't know if you've seen some of the posts that I've been putting on X, but I was contacted several weeks ago by, maybe we spoke about this even. Do you know the guy Doug Hagman?
I'm only familiar with him through what you've told me about what he kind of tipped you off, gave you some information that kind of led you on a wild goose chase.
A little bit, yeah. He is a guy who, he's kind of a old school private investigator who had a show for a long time. I used to watch him. He would appear on Alex Jones and stuff like that. He ran into some really rough times, and I got really no beef with Doug Hagman, except that you've hit it on the head. He contacted me specifically to tell me that he had been hired as a private investigator by someone, he couldn't tell me who, and that he allegedly had gone to this apartment here in Pittsburgh, and he told me that he spoke to Maxwell Urich, and I found that very odd because I'm a little bit more past the plausible needle than you might be. I think it's very probable that the assassin or the would-be assassin in Butler, PA was Maxwell Urich. So I went to this apartment to evaluate what Doug Hagman had told me. And by the way, whether it's true or false, it seemed weird. Why would Doug Hagman call me to tell me this? If he's conducting a private investigation of whatever it is that might be going on at this apartment, why does he care what I think? That's strange. But also, when I went to this apartment, there were a bunch of packages in the door. I parked this car that I'm in right now in front of the building there, and I had just installed a 4K dash cam. So I parked the car, I went to lunch, checked, there were various cars that had left, and I checked the dash cam after lunch. Nobody who went into any of these cars was Maxwell Urich. It was just people parking in front of this building and going to the restaurant that I was in. There were some Amazon packages at the door that were not addressed to Maxwell Urich. They were addressed to the person who I believe is the resident of that apartment. It just became a very strange question as to why Doug Hagman would call me and say this at all. Now, we've also spoken about Jack Posobiec and his book, Bulletproof. A lot of people saw I had encountered Jack outside Madison Square Garden in New York City when Trump had his rally there. And I just asked Jack why he was ignoring evidence from Butler, PA, including a bullet trajectory down the back row of the bleachers that John Cullen had identified, and that he and Eli Crane and Corey Mills all seemed to agree indicated a trajectory of gunfire that did not align with the roof of American Glass Research. And so, again, all of these things give rise to, as you said, the plausibility of a second shooter position. I don't know, if you haven't seen this, let's just give this a listen for a second.
Sure.
Let's see. Why do I not have sound here? Let's just take that back. Okay, well, I guess that's not cooperating right now on the sound. Okay, forget it. I basically approached Jack and asked him, why is he ignoring all this evidence of a second shooter? And he just became very aggressive. I've known Jack for many years, and I never really had an encounter with him like this. He lies to NYPD, tells them that I was harassing his wife. I didn't even see his wife there until he raised that point. I find it really reprehensible to lie to the police to try to get somebody in trouble. But people can check this out on X. The issue is Jack, in his book, says that he hired a private investigator as part of his, process of writing the book and running all this stuff down. I haven't heard of anybody else coming out and telling us they've hired a private investigator relative to this Butler, PA incident. Have you?
No, not at all.
It's interesting. So, it certainly makes Jack the number one suspect in terms of hiring Doug Hagman. And I don't know why those guys would potentially want to tell me a lie, but it appears that might be what has happened. So the thing that's very curious about all of this is we really don't know who was up on the roof, because there's been a lot of contradictory evidence. You did a great job of getting the autopsy report for Thomas Crooks. And that was in one of our first shows. I think that's where you caught my attention, was with the autopsy report that you got. Excellent work on that, Ken. And you opened my eyes to the Coroner's Act. Do you want to just fill everybody in on that autopsy in case they missed that?
Yeah, sure. So just real briefly, it was like a 3-month legal fight to get these documents. The Allegheny County conducted the autopsy, but it told me they can't give me the report because it's Butler County jurisdiction. And so I asked Butler County for it. They also said you couldn't have it because it's not subject to disclosure under the state's open records law. It's called the right to know law. It's the state version of FOIA. And while that is true, there's another law called the Coroner's Act, which does say that certain documents, including autopsy reports, can be made available if you pay a fee. And an appeals panel ruled that the Coroner's Act trumps the right to know law, and therefore these autopsy reports and other documents could be made available for a fee. So I paid the fee, got them in October. I didn't realize we were probably in Butler at the same time, because I got them, I think, like on October 7th, that Monday after the October 5th rally. And the rest is history. We've been corresponding and analyzing these documents ever since. Or were you in Butler on October 5th? Sorry, I might be misremembering that.
I was, yeah. That was the second Trump rally, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but unfortunately we didn't know each other yet at that time, but it was a great effort by you. Excellent job obtaining those records. And our conversation about the Coroner's Act caused me to, and first of all, I didn't even know that there was an autopsy for Thomas Crooks. So that was incredible work that you did. And it led me to filing a right to know request with the Allegheny County Medical Examiner's office. And this was a follow-up to my right to know request and my right to know lawsuit that I had filed and now have subsequently prevailed in. That was against the Beaver County District Attorney's office. And people are going to recall that they were denying certain evidence that I feel would prove that it was not Thomas Crooks on the roof. So we're going to be getting into the outcome of my right to know action against the medical examiner's office. People who are following me on X at JG_CSTT can read this final determination letter. I posted this just the other day on December 20th. And Ken, I don't know if you're going to be surprised, but we're going to find out what the Allegheny County Medical Examiner and the Pennsylvania Office of Open Records consider the word final to mean. And that's what I mean by a bit of a Bill Clinton moment. You're going to recall that he said that it all depends on what you think the meaning of the word is.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm very curious now to what you've been told.
Yeah. Well, let's just look at this for a second, because initially what they said the final determination is, as you said, the Coroner's Act. It basically, they told me when I wrote to the medical examiner's office that they wouldn't give me the autopsy and specifically any records related to how they had determined that the body delivered to them by the Butler County coroner was in fact the body of Thomas Crooks. That's what I really wanted to know, because we read, I think it was in the New York Times or something like that, said that the FBI had used DNA to confirm that it was Thomas Crooks. And it was surprising to me because I don't know if Thomas Crooks has a criminal history such that the police would have his DNA on file. So I don't think you can just look at somebody's DNA and determine who they are without having a previous DNA sample. Do you know anything about this?
That came, I heard that. I was going after the first press conference that the FBI held. It was almost like midnight on July 13th. And by that point, like Fox News and all these media outlets had already been leaked Thomas Crooks' identity. But the FBI is still saying, you know, we can't confirm who we think the shooter is. We're running DNA and other biometrics, which I assume meant facial recognition. And so that's where I got that. But yeah, that's a really good point. I don't think they could. I mean, the FBI obviously does have one of the world's biggest DNA databases, but that's still, that doesn't follow that they'd necessarily have Crooks's DNA. I don't know how they would make that determination.
Right. I mean, I think the DNA database is basically populated by evidence and information provided by the police. And so if Thomas Crooks has never been arrested, how would they have a DNA sample of him? They didn't tell us that his parents came in and gave him some sample from 23andMe or checked his dental records or whatever. They've kind of painted themselves into a corner with this, I think. And so this is basically what I was asking the Allegheny Medical Examiner for. Now, one of the reasons, Ken, why we've decided to do this episode as a sponsor exclusive, and I want to remind people they can sponsor Ken, and you're going to get access to the upcoming sponsor exclusive episode that we're going to be doing in just about 15 minutes. People can go on to substack.com/@KenSilva. You're also going to be able to get it on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com, and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I know it's a long list of sponsorship sites for me, Ken. I've also recently been allowed to start taking subscribers on X. So people who subscribe to @JG_CSTT on X will also be able to see this episode. But part of the reason we have to do it this way is that there's going to be information and evidence that we're going to be showing that would actually get us bounced and kicked off of YouTube and some of these other channels that are just kind of like allergic to evidence. And I've tried it before. Some of these photos are just banned immediately. So I really do encourage people to join us. I don't want to reveal right now what has happened in this case, but the initial outcome was the medical examiner's office told me that they're not going to give me this evidence that I'm asking for because there was an ongoing investigation. And I don't remember if you and I spoke about this on air or if it was an offline private conversation, but you then told me about the Coroner's Act. I think you might have just been explaining how you went about your investigation and your right to know action and how the Coroner's Act superseded the other laws. And that's basically what I told them, that because the criminal investigation was separate from the death investigation by Pennsylvania law, we have a right to know. Isn't that correct by your understanding?
Yeah, that's right. For specific records that are actually listed in the Coroner's Act. And so I won my case against Butler County, and it's interesting that your case is against Allegheny County because the records that are listed in the Coroner's Act include the autopsy report, which I got, toxicology reports that I got, a coroner's report that I got, and then there's $50 for a cremation or disposition authorization, which I did not receive. And I don't exactly remember why that is, but I think it might be because Butler didn't have the cremation, that document. That was an Allegheny County thing. So you should be able to have the legal power now to get that cremation or disposition authorization, which I don't know exactly what that was, but Google says it's a legal document that allows a designated individual to formally authorize the cremation of a deceased person and specify how their cremated remains should be handled. So it would be huge if you could get that document. And, you know, my reading of your final determination and the appeals decision, it's my understanding that you should be able to get that document. Now, I don't know if you have to pay the $50 or what, but we need to definitely see that.
Absolutely. And $50 is a marginal, nominal fee to have to pay to get that. That's so wonderful that you're pointing that detail out to me, because I don't know that I necessarily had identified that. Ken, I'm loving this alley-oop that you and I have been doing for the past couple of weeks. It's an incredible partnership and association. I really look forward to continuing this investigation with you. And that is an interesting aspect that I will definitely pursue. I can't wait. We're just 5 minutes away from continuing our show on the sponsor exclusive segment, and people's minds are going to be blown by this latest development. I can't say that it's atypical, but it is pretty stunning. And I mean, this is just more obstruction. I can tell people that much. We got this final determination letter. It's dated December 20th. And I mean, just like in my case against the Beaver County District Attorney, this agency completely ignored every single deadline, every single opportunity to present material. I'm going to go through all the legal documents. That's the other thing, is that some of these documents have addresses and things on them, so we don't want to just be blasting these out all over the internet. It's going to be on the sponsor exclusive segment. People who are really interested in getting into the details of this kind of legal material and understanding exactly what's going on in the case, I think, are really going to enjoy this and benefit from this. I don't see anybody else doing this in-depth level of legal and investigative journalism on this topic.
Yeah, me neither. And I guess before we go to the paywall, I'll take one more opportunity to publicly bash the House task force, because they have all these records that we're seeking. We know that they got the autopsy report, and Chairman Mike Kelly said, "Oh, this is gruesome stuff that the public doesn't need to see." And then a couple of weeks later, I made the autopsy report public, and it's like very, very bland, not really graphic at all. And moreover, we know that they have the x-rays and the autopsy images, because Clay Higgins, to his credit, did release one x-ray picture and one picture of the ear that came from the autopsy examination. But of course, all this information should be made public. It's like ridiculous that we're even having this discussion. They should be making every single thing. If they want to restore public trust in federal institutions, everything needs to be made public.
I agree with you. And, you've just reminded me that, did you see my discussion in the hallway there with Clay Higgins at the final, I guess they were saying it was the final, hearing of that committee. I've just realized what my sound issue was here. Let's just run this for people if they haven't seen this. Stand by just 1 second.
But now that I've been on the inside, I can see what has gone wrong with the FBI. I don't think it can be fixed.
Did they explain why they hosed off the roof, destroying evidence the next day?
Well, it wasn't the next day, but it was a damn good question. Why did you release the most significant crime scene of the century after a few days? Why did you release the body for cremation 8 days after the assassination attempt? Why did you release the body for cremation knowing that other investigative authorities are conducting in parallel investigations, including Congress and the Pennsylvania State Police? 3 years ago, 1 year ago, I didn't think we could fix the FBI. Yeah, I think it was so corrupt at the top and so dysfunctional, he had to dismantle the whole thing, start over. But now that I've been on the inside, I can see what has gone wrong with the FBI. I don't think it can be fixed.
Did they explain why they hosed off the roof, destroying evidence the next day?
All right. I thought that might have been the full, that's just an excerpt, I'm sorry. So people can go on to X and check out my full conversation there with Clay Higgins, but he basically walks away from me when I try to get to the meat of this conversation, and I found it very disappointing. I find myself wondering if he might not be engaged in a limited hangout. Have you had the chance to see that full conversation I had with him?
Yeah, I think we discussed this 2 weeks ago on your show, where you were kind of having internet issues. And I guess I'll just remind everybody that this is the same Clay Higgins that claims that he has evidence of, quote, ghost buses filled with hundreds of FBI informants that were driven into the Capitol on the morning of January 6th, which, if he has that, like, how has he not released that yet? That sounds a little far-fetched to me. So this is the guy we're dealing with.
Yeah, and I mean, again, we don't really know. He walked away from me, and we didn't get to find that out. But he's, again, talking about fixing the FBI. The upshot of that hearing was basically we got to get more money to the Secret Service to rectify all these problems. And now we've got drones over New Jersey. I've been talking about possible counter-UAS drones that might have been used there in Butler. Palmer Luckey lost his mind when I started talking about that. But Ken, we're just right now at the end of our segment here for the free viewers, and I really do encourage people to check out substack.com/@KenSilva and definitely join us for the sponsor exclusive segment that's going to be coming up right now. People can also get that on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Also, people who are subscribed to me on X @JG_CSTT. Everybody's going to get to see it. So please join us. This is going to be something that nobody is going to see anywhere else. This is original reporting. All of this stuff that I'm talking about and the stuff that Ken is talking about, material that we've obtained from doing this right to know legal work ourselves. So stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back in less than 5 minutes. Thanks.